I am Daddy Warpig, and this is the Kick-Ass Geek Cast. I am back! That's right, it is Monday, October 27th, 2014, a year that when I was little would have signaled some date far, far in the future. 2014 is a year associated in the back of my mind with science fiction and space travel that hasn't come true for most of us. However, I am broadcasting a radio show across a worldwide computer network that can, theoretically speaking, be heard in every country on the planet. It's not a flying car, but I'll take it. The Kick-Ass Geek Cast is broadcast live from the House of Geekery. daddywarpig.wordpress.com, daddywarpig.wordpress.com, or you can catch me, Daddy Warpig, your host, on Twitter at Daddy_Warpig, at Daddy_Warpig. The very, very first topic, we talk a lot of topics on the show, so we move very, very quickly. You're going to have to hold on to your seat and try to keep up. The very, very first topic for tonight's show is, unfortunately, an apology. I had originally lined up for tonight's show an incredible writer by the name of Sarah Hoyt. She was going to come from Colorado across that vast worldwide computer network. And we were going to have a discussion about tonight's topic, which is, by the way, why we fight. Unfortunately, due to an equipment failure here at the House of Geekery, I can't interview anyone ever again until I get it fixed. I can't go on streams. I can't do anything but my show. I sent the very, very gracious Sarah Hoyt an email as soon as the accident happened, explaining the problem. I want to apologize to all of you who may have read about that and are disappointed that she couldn't come on the show tonight. I will do my best, using quotes from her blog, to represent her position accurately. So that's the first topic tonight, is my apology to her and you for that. Why we fight. I saw a couple of questions coming across Twitter as I was reading it, like I do. And the questions were about Gamergate. And every single one, and I've seen this multiple times, and it's something that many, many people seem to want to know and have many and varied opinions on. Is Gamergate about a culture war, or is it about ethics in journalism? Many, many people have answered this question. All of them have answered it wrong. I, your host, will give you the definitive answer so the question never need be asked again. I want you to imagine for a moment, if you will, that you're living in a small village and a band of raiders come to your village. They want to convert you to their religion, and if they cannot convert you to their religion, they will kill you and burn your village to the ground. So they attack, and you are forced to defend yourselves with whatever weapons you have available. So someone a historian thousands of years later asks this question: is it a religious war or just a war? And the answer is, it depends on who you are. The raiders, for them, this is a religious war being carried out for religious reasons. That's why they're there. Convert or die. For the people living in the village, this is not a religious war. They're trying to defend their homes. They're trying to defend their family members. They're trying to keep their way of life that they have always known from being destroyed. So the question, is this a religious war, comes down to, who are you? Are you a raider destroying for religious reasons, or are you a villager trying to protect your own? It is analogous to Gamergate, which is why I brought it up. Is this a cultural war? Is this a political, ideological war? Or is this about ethics in journalism? It depends on which side of the line you stand. For those people involved in the consumer revolt currently occupying the Gamergate hashtag, for the vast majority of them, I cannot speak for everyone, and indeed I know for a fact that some of them don't see it this way, but most of them do. This is about three things: ethics in journalism, stop abusing your customers, and stop pushing ideology. I've talked about those three things before. I've talked about those three things after formulating them with people in the hashtag, and by and large, for the most part, most people agree with all of them. For those people, it's about ethics in journalism, making sure games journalists aren't taking bribes, making sure games journalists properly disclose if there is a conflict of interest on a story. Indeed, we just saw a site today, and I wish I could remember it off the top of my head, but they included a disclosure with an article. It seems that this particular piece of equipment, of gaming equipment they're covering, was kickstarted by a person who had been a former editor at their site. And they put it right by the article, and the comment by everyone on Gamergate was, awesome. That's what we're looking for. That's what we want, because they're sincere. Ethics in journalism. The question is, what about the antis? What kind of struggle is this for them? The answer, I'm afraid, is this. This is, for them, an ideological or political struggle. Now, I, your host, am not a political figure. I don't advocate or endorse any particular political party, any particular political candidate, any particular political movement. I will only say that for myself, I loathe and hate totalitarianism with a passion. And to quote another brilliant philosopher whose name I cannot recall right now, deep apologies, I have sworn eternal enmity against every single form of dominion over the human mind. That is as political as I get. Hatred of totalitarianism. But for these other people, not for Gamergate, but for the other side, they are pursuing ideological goals. So like the raiders, the religious raiders, they are pursuing a cultural war. This is not Gamergate's fault. This is not the fault of those people participating in the consumer revolt currently occupying the hashtag. This is the fault of the aggressors in this current conflict, the aggressors who declared gamers to be dead, the aggressors who to this day cannot let go of the political side of the issue, and that's because for them, this is political. You members of a consumer revolt are standing in the way of their political and ideological goals, which is why they hate you. Now, I have gone to a little bit of effort to try and pull out a couple of quotes about this so I can illustrate it without you having to rely on my sole word. Let's start with Bob Chipman, the movie Bob, who said on 25th of October 2014, even if it was about ethics, Gamergate's ultimate goal is to keep gaming from improving. He's linking to a New York Times article, and I will talk about that article a little bit later. The future of video games is threatened by an ugly culture around them. They're talking about altering the political tenor of video games, a political goal. That's how he defines improvement. But let's go to Anita Sarkeesian. This is a war, talking about Gamergate now, on the women, critics, and feminists who care about making gaming more diverse and inclusive. This is a war on women and gaming in general, waged by a group of sexist monsters. All of this is political language motivated by political and ideological understanding that is what is important to them. Now, moving to the New York Times article, it discusses the frustration of this writer that we in Gamergate, or those, what do they call us? Misogynistic, obtuse shitslingers, don't lay down and let them walk all over us. Their actions, quoting from the New York Times article, look like a concerted campaign or orchestrated campaign of harassment against women who make or write about video games. It started because of a column by Leigh Alexander that criticized mainstream game culture as an embarrassing cesspool of adolescent consumerism. Once again, that is a political point of view, a political analysis. For them, this is about advancing their cultural goals of games they want to see made and advancing ideological goals, which is why it is for them an ideological war. And you can find a myriad of quotes like this from all sorts of people. Search on Twitter. It's easily found. So the question is then, why do we fight this war? What is it we're fighting for, and what is it we're fighting against? Well, I already gave you the three goals of most people involved in the consumer revolt: ethics and journalism, stop abusing your customers, and stop pushing ideology. For example, the Bayonetta 2 reviews, where the reviewer docked points because their ideology told them Bayonetta was offensive as a character because of her sexualization. We don't like that. We don't want that. That's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for all three of those things. But what are we fighting against? Why do we fight? What does the future hold if Gamergate, if this consumer revolt fails? You may think this is a purely speculative question, that this is something that I can just make up and pull out of thin air, but I don't have to. Because this exact same struggle has been played out in other forms of media, and this exact same struggle has been played out and is being played out right now in science fiction and fantasy novels. I want to introduce you to the Evil League of Evil. There are 4 members currently of the Evil League of Evil. Vox Day, the Supreme Dark Lord, Larry Correa, International Lord of Hate, Sarah Hoyt, the beautiful but evil space princess, and John C. Wright, the evil brain in a jar. All 4 members of the Evil League of Evil are writers and novelists. Most of them have had, in addition to that, jobs and careers doing a number of other things. What unites them is the fact that they are outcasts and pariahs against the establishment in science fiction and fantasy, most ably represented, in addition to editors and publishers at the big 5 publishing houses in New York, most ably represented by the current reigning rulers of the science fiction and fantasy writers of America, out of which at least one of them has been ejected and others have not even joined because of the knowledge of their beliefs being heterodox. Now, it may not surprise you, those of you who have been involved in Gamergate, to learn that if you do not agree with the reigning culture of the social justice warriors who long ago, in the late 80s and early 90s, took over the field of science fiction and fantasy publishing, they took over editorships at all of the New York houses. They took over the leadership of convention committees, and eventually they took over the leadership of the SFWA. Let me make an analogy for you video gamers out there. Imagine that these social justice warriors we are currently combating have taken over every media outlet in gaming, and they've taken over every major gaming publisher and developer. EA, Activision, Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, everybody, with the sole exception of, say, Valve. Valve, who is completely wholly owned by Gabe Newell, is himself an iconoclast and keeps Valve open to publishing games that are not clones of Depression Quest and Gone Home. Imagine what that future would look like for you as a gamer, that the only place you could get non-SJW approved material was through Valve, and everybody else ran under the SJW flag. If you were a developer, if you were a programmer or an artist or a voice performer, you have to either be on board with the SJW agenda or pretend you are and keep your heterodox beliefs to yourselves. Does that sound like a fun future? Does that sound like something you'd want? That is exactly analogous to the situation in science fiction and fantasy, to where every single major publishing house is run by SJWs. Authors who are not have to pretend, have to hide their beliefs unless they are superstars who were grandfathered in, like Tom Clancy. And there is one publisher, an independent publisher, founded by an iconoclastic individual with a stubborn streak, who decided to keep publishing books that were fun, that were story first, that were engaging and entertaining and did not exist as a form of propaganda or ideological indoctrination. One publishing house. Everybody else, a reign of SJWs. That one publishing house, by the way, again, being analogized to Valve in this particular analogy, is called Banned Books. They publish a huge number of writers. I haven't sat down and counted, but a quick glance showed me at least 40 to 50 in the last list I saw. And they are politically diverse, beginning with Trotskyite communist on one end, all the way over to the purist libertarian at the other end. You can see that if you have a heterodox view and you believe in a good story and you believe in entertaining the audience, in giving the audience what they want, not what you think they should be given, the only place people can go to is Banned Books or, within the last 3 or 4 years, indie publishing, which is to say ebooks. That is the situation in science fiction and fantasy. I want to read you something now. This is Sarah Hoyt talking about, she was hired on or got contracted as a writer at one of these houses early in her career because, and this is the fun thing about the Evil League of Evil. The Evil League of Evil is 4 writers that if you put them in a room and tossed in any given topic, what you would find is that there would be an almost instant argument, not a fight, but an argument over the merits of this topic, either 3-to-1 or 2-to-2, or more likely 4-on-4. They do not agree about almost anything, and they do not, in fact, even necessarily talk to each other all that often or read each other all that often. They are linked only by the fact that they have been cast out by the establishment and they are rebels in this. Sarah Hoyt calls it a civil war. I think civil war is a bit generous. I would represent it as being a guerrilla insurgency that is very, very hard pressed to maintain what they have. That is just my position as an outsider. And they hate these 3. They hate these 4 people, which is funny, which is ironic, which is bitterly ironic, because as social justice warriors, what they're pushing for is more women and more minorities involved in whatever it is they're invading. And I want to give you a rundown of the members of the Evil League of Evil. We'll start with Larry Correa, who is Portuguese in descent and was born the son of a farmer and grew up on a farm. Portuguese, thus in American terms, Hispanic. So then we move to the infamous and much reviled Vox Day, who is a quarter Mexican, according to what I read today, and qualifies for membership in an Indian tribe, and is thus largely not white. Sarah Hoyt was born in Portugal. Her native tongue is Portuguese. She speaks English with a charming European accent. She asked me in the email setting up this interview that was aborted if it would be okay that she talked in an accent on the show. I said, I don't care. We've got a worldwide audience. Your accent is fine with me. Portuguese, native-born Portuguese, moved to America as an adult, therefore becoming Hispanic in America. So that's 3. 3 members of the Evil League of Evil are minorities. 1 is a woman. Now the last one, John C. Wright is supposed to be a white male, but I have it on good authority that he is actually a angel of sound and fury sent from another dimension to thwart evil in this one. I cannot reveal the source of that information, but I have it on good authority. All four of these individuals have their own websites, have their own group of fans who have their own charming names. Larry Correia's are called Monster Hunter Nation after his Monster Hunter International books. Vox Day's readers are called the Dread Ilk because of the amount of abuse they have received. Not that you can relate, members, participants in this consumer revolt, right? Sarah Hoyt's readers are called Hoyt's Huns. John C. Wright's readers have no official title so far as I am aware, but they can be distinguished from the common rabble by the light of righteous fury that burns in their eyes. That is the evil league of evil. And yet, despite being 75% minority, they can't get a friendly word from social justice warriors. And back in her days, working for a mainstream publisher, Sarah Hoyt had to hide her opinions, developed by growing up under a real, actual, can get executed if you piss people off dictatorship, okay? This is not oppression because somebody disagrees with you or asks you a question. This is real. They censor the school books oppression. She described that experience this way. Imagine that you have to go through an entire day holding up one of those Greek theater masks in front of your face with your right hand. Everything you do is with your left, and you can't shift your arm. You don't have the flexibility to rest that hand. You don't. Like that, but over years and years. The brain space devoted to playing chess with potential would-be guessers of my real opinion, and more importantly, the brain space required to not say something I couldn't live with while not openly dissenting, were driving me batty and I didn't even know it. See, that's the difficulty. When you have heterodox opinions and yet you don't want to lose your job, you're forced to either sit there and lie and do something against your conscience, sit there and be silent and not cheer while everyone around you is cheering, or make something up that sounds like you're agreeing, but you're really not. And if you don't play that game well enough, they take your job away, they kick you out into the cold, they ostracize you, they insult you, they vilify and slander you. Not that Gamergaters would know what that feels like, right, guys? You see this. This is what it's like to work in an industry where everything is being run by the politically intolerant, by the politically obsessive, by the politically cruel and vengeful and retributive. And I have only given you a small slice of the many words she's written on the subject and the many words that John C. Wright and Vox Day and Larry Correia have written on the subject, because, again, it's only a half-hour show. But can you imagine working in that industry as a programmer, working in that industry as an artist, working in that industry as a game developer, as anyone? how hellish and oppressive that would be to day after day after day to constantly watch everything you say, to constantly watch everything that you write, to constantly watch all of the art you produce to make sure it doesn't offend the easily offended. Can you imagine how oppressive and draining and depressing and deadening that must be? Well, that is what is coming for games if we retreat, if we give up, if we lose. That is what will happen to our hobby. That is what will happen to our industries. They will turn all of our games into smug little on whatever political points they want to illustrate today happen to be. And if the politics changes in a year or 5 years or 10, what used to be noble and decent and good will become vile and evil and rejected. And you can suddenly find yourself to be public enemy number one. That's the future under these people. And I can say that not because I'm guessing nothing, not because it is a fantasy I have conjured up out of my own raw intellect and vibrant imagination. I can say that because it happened to people. It is happening to people in other fields. And if we do not hold the line, it will happen in gaming. I am your host, Daddy Warpig. Read my blog, daddywardpig.wordpress.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Send this link out on Facebook or Twitter or where, like it, favorite, whatever you want to do. You can read me also at daddy_warpig, at daddy_warpig on Twitter. I'm on there all the time right now. I want to thank you for tuning in and remind everybody, even though the show is no longer live, once it gets uploaded, they can access the URL you are looking at now. I am your host, signing off. I will be back.